There appears to be gathering pressure to remove Joe Biden from the presidential race. His poor performance in his debate with Donald Trump and appearances since have raised serious concerns about his fitness to serve a second term. His apparent declining health has tonight even more members of his own party wanting him to withdraw. So, will he or won't he? Let's bring in here Professor Markus Wagner from the University of Wollongong. He's an expert in US constitutional law and politics. Professor, Joe Biden putting up quite a fight to stay on, but what do you think? Is he going to pull out or soldier on?
Thank you for having me, Tim. It's a really difficult question, and we have to remember his debate performance was, for all intents and purposes, pretty poor. So for the last couple of weeks, we've seen President Biden try to shore up his support, and it seemed to have initially been quite successful. Over the last few days, we see a growing chorus of voices and increasingly influential voices to step up the rhetoric and the calls for him to step aside. My own take is that it really requires sort of the elder statespeople, if you will, of the Democratic Party to make those suggestions. And here I'm thinking of Nancy Pelosi or former President Obama.
It'll take someone of that calibre, in your view, to convince him to do that.
I really do. And it probably also is good to keep in mind that Jill Biden seems to play an influential, pivotal role in this whole debate.
How likely is that to happen? Someone like Obama stepping in and saying, Joe, it's time?
I really don't know. I think it's everyone's guess at this point. Like I said, it's a bit of a groundswell that seems to be happening, and whether that tips over really into a large enough swell, if you will, is at this point, I don't think anyone can make a serious prediction.
How significant is the donors to the Democratic Party starting to get shaky and talk about withdrawing their support?
I think that certainly adds to this sentiment of Joe Biden probably stepping aside at some point if that becomes louder. So we've seen the congressional leaders in the Democratic Party making suggestions or calling for meetings in which they want to hear from the rank and file, if you will, and the wider leadership as to where they should be going. So all of that, again, points towards sort of a growing movement that we're seeing.
We're hearing some talk about the 25th Amendment that would allow for a president to effectively be replaced, that possibly coming into play. How likely is it that that might be used?
So the 25th Amendment is a bit of a curious animal, if you will, and I, for one, think that's a red herring, mostly brought in by the Republicans so far. And if you go back, the 25th Amendment really is there to flesh out what happens when there's an inability of the president to carry on their duties. And it's made great inroads on television and in movies, but it's never been used in practice.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, Professor. If Joe Biden stays in the race, can he win?
He's facing an increasingly uphill battle. So his approval rating is pretty poor at the moment. I think about 37%, just about the same as Donald Trump at roughly the same time. And it now comes down to the battleground states. And there it's a real toss-up. Some polls suggest tightening, some polls suggest widening. I'd like to say I don't know. But at this point, I think the Democrats have a much harder pathway towards winning. So there's my answer.
All right. It's going to be a fascinating few months. Professor, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.